When Ethan moved into the old house on Blackwood Lane, he didn't expect much. He was a writer, a loner, and he had always preferred silence over the noise of the city. The price was suspiciously low, but he chalked it up to the house's age. The realtor mentioned something about previous owners leaving suddenly, but Ethan didn't pay much attention. The house was beautiful in a gothic, eerie sort of way. Tall, with pointed roofs, dark wooden floors, and narrow hallways. It creaked when the wind blew, but that only added to its charm. It was the perfect place for him to focus on his next novel. But the silence he had longed for didn't last. It started with whispers. The first night, Ethan heard it while lying in bed, just on the edge of sleep. A faint murmur like someone talking behind the walls. He sat up, listening, but it faded the moment he moved. Just the pipes, he muttered to himself. The second night, the whispers returned. This time, they lasted longer. It was a soft, rhythmic sound, like a conversation happening in another room. He got out of bed and walked through the house, checking every corner. Nothing. The next day, he knocked on the walls. Hollow. He assumed there might be vents or small passageways behind them. Maybe the sound of the wind was getting trapped inside. But the voices became clearer. By the fourth night, he could make out words. "Ethan!" He froze. The voice was right behind the wall, directly next to his bed. It was a hushed whisper, stretched out, lingering in the air. He turned on the light, heart pounding, sweat forming on his forehead. He pressed his ear against the wall. Nothing. He didn't sleep that night. The next day he searched the house. He checked behind bookshelves, under furniture, in the attic. Nothing. But as he was about to give up, he found something carved into the wooden frame of the basement door. "Help us!" His breath caught in his throat. The words were deep, etched by something sharp. Underneath there were names, dozens of them, some scratched out, some so faded they were barely legible. But one name stood out, fresh and untouched. Ethan. He backed away, his mind racing. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone had been here before and carved the names. But why his name? The whispers returned that night, but now they were desperate. "Ethan, please." He clutched the sheets, heart hammering. "Who's there?" Silence. Then scraping. A slow, deliberate sound, like nails dragging against wood. It came from inside the walls. He grabbed his phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it at the wall. The sound stopped. He wasn't alone in this house. The next morning, he called the realtor. "You never told me about the previous owners," Ethan said, gripping his phone. The woman hesitated. "Mr. Carter, I didn't think you'd believe me. But if you've heard them, then you know." "Heard what?" "The voices. The house keeps them." His stomach twisted. "What happened to the people before me?" There was a long pause. "They disappeared." Ethan hung up. He needed answers. He searched the basement, running his hands along the walls. Then behind an old bookshelf, he found it. A hidden door. It was small, barely noticeable, with a rusted handle. He hesitated. Then slowly, he pulled it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust. The room was small, with stone walls covered in deep scratches. Old, rotting blankets were piled in the corner. And in the center of the floor, bones. His breath hitched. He stepped closer. The bones were small, human, but the worst part was the walls. They were covered in names, the same names as on the basement door, scratched into the stone by desperate hands. A gust of air rushed past him. Then the whispers returned, but this time they were all around him. "Ethan, you have to run." He stumbled back. The shadows in the room shifted, moving unnaturally. A shape emerged from the corner, a tall, gaunt figure with hollow eyes and stretched skin. It reached for him. He ran. Ethan bolted up the stairs, heart pounding. The whispers chased him, growing louder, more frantic. The walls shook. The door slammed shut. He grabbed his keys, yanked the front door open, and stumbled outside. Silence. The house stood still, dark and lifeless, as if nothing had happened. But Ethan knew better. The next morning, he packed his things. He wasn't staying. As he loaded the last box into his car, he glanced back at the house. In the window, just behind the glass, something watched him. A shadow, a figure, a whisper carried on the wind. "You can't leave." The door creaked open behind him, and the house swallowed him whole.